Well, the Wellfleet Rights Public Access Committee meeting is now in session. And first item is call to order, which I think I just did. We're going to be talking about the Shellfish Department report from Nancy Savetta, an update on our budget request, and a report on three site visits that we did Monday, and discuss the legal opinion that the select board solicited regarding Omaha Road and any other business. We have Nancy Savetta. She just stepped away from her camera. She's the Shellfish Constable, and we'll be hearing from her next. And I'm not sure how many of the other guests that we have listed on the agenda will be here. We'll find out as we go along. Right now, I see the name Ann Udowitz, Bob Tonsmere, maybe, Barbara Nessel, and Chris Roxburgh. Nancy, are you ready? You don't need a mask.
I do. I just I have some shellfishermen, at least one person who's about to come in.
Okay.
So if we can just wait 1 second.
Okay.
She's right here. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is share my screen, and Jordan, I'll introduce as Jordan Halloran is the AmeriCorps member, here AmeriCorps Cape Cod member who's serving with the department this year.
Okay.
She works with us twice a week, and she's been instrumental in making this map. I would never know how to do it. And, you know, we have been just really anally. This is Barbara Austin. So
Hi.
she's
Hi, Barbara.
Former chair of the Shellfish Advisory Board. And I told her, oops, Irene Payne is not finding the link. Hold on. So let me just do that quickly. Hopefully I still have it copied. I do. Anyway, Jordan and I have spent a lot of hours poring over this. I mean, up until yesterday, I was like, oh my God, here's another landing that we patrol. So it could be a work in progress, but I think we've cataloged a lot. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen so we can just start going through it. Jordan will go through the document, but I'm going to have the map up. So this is the document that Jordan will go through. And then this is the map. So this is North Wellfleet here, what we call North Wellfleet. And take it away, Jordan. And then if you have any questions, I'm not going to be able to see you. So if we could just, what I'll do is I will stop at the end of the north. So maybe just hold your questions, and then I'll take any questions people have. And then we'll move on to south. So go ahead. Jordan, do you feel comfortable taking it away?
Yep. All right, so starting from the west, we have the gut, and then we move up to Fisherman's Landing, and that's technically owned by the Park Service, but there's a letter within the Echeverria document documenting that they allow the public to use that. We've put the dike on here just for future as the restoration goes through. There might be access points there. And then moving up, we have the sand pullout off Chequesset Neck Road across from the golf course a little bit. It's privately owned, but people use it. And then coming down on here, we have the Chequesset Neck Yacht Club. We don't have it on the map, but we have it on the document. It's privately owned by the yacht club, and it was never a town landing, but they occasionally allow the town to use it. And then there's an adjacent lot, 19114, that is technically town owned, but it's been lost to a rock revetment. And then moving down, we have power.
Jordan, one thing, just when you say it, could you just say whether it's in Appendix B or not? So
Yes,
the gut is in Appendix B. It's a town-owned parcel, I believe.
yes, the
So
gut
just,
is in
yep,
Appendix
okay,
B,
thank you.
and it's town owned. Fisherman's is in Appendix B. The dike is also in Appendix B, and as is the Chequesset Neck Yacht Club, that 19114 is in that document, but like I said, it was lost to a rock revetment.
Jordan,
Yes,
this is John Reel. Appendix B is a report that was put together 25 years ago by Durand Echeverria, and we should probably refer to it as the Echeverria report. It's more rewarding of the great work he did.
okay. Can you say the name one more time? Echeverria?
You got it.
Awesome, okay. So then moving down, we have Powers Landing, which is on the Echeverria document. We have Mayo Beaches A through F. There are however many, 6 different Mayo Beach entrances, including Keller's Corner. So between Keller's and Mayo Beach, there are numerous entrances that are also on that document. And then we have the L pier, the boat ramp, and the finger piers. We just have the one point for all of that on the boat ramp, but we know that people go land from all over on the pier there. And then moving into Duck Creek, up to the north, we have the Bank Street parking lot, right across from Bank Street. It's the old fire barn. That is on the Echeverria document as well. Moving down, we have Pine Point Road and the railroad bridge. It's not in that document, but it is frequently used. And then we have Pine Point Way, which in the Echeverria document is Old Cahoon Hollow Road. Moving down, we have Richmond Lane, which is privately owned, but the owner allows parking on the right and use of a certain path. So right below that, we have Nahant Bluffs, which is used, but there's private property surrounding what we believe is the access path. Into Chipman
Richmond Lane,
Cove.
yep. No, Richmond, yep.
All set?
Oops, sorry. Oh, I didn't have-
It's okay.
Sorry, hold on, sorry. Let me just mute.
Moving down into Chipman's Cove, we have Old Pier, which is called Taylor Road in the Echeverria document. We have Chipman's Cove Southeast, which is a small path on the lot 2826 across from Cove View. It's not in the Echeverria document and it is privately owned, but it is often used. And then we have Spence Way, also not in the Echeverria document, frequently used, privately owned, and it's vacant in the wintertime. And moving over, we have Chipman's Cove Southwest, which is on the side of Nauset Road. That property is owned by the Wellfleet Conservation Trust. Moving down, we have Chipman's Cove West at the top there, yep, which is if you go straight back in the thing, it's kind of to the right, and then to the left is the Whitmans, the aquaculture access. And both of those are listed on the Echeverria document. And then coming around back, we have the Indian Neck Beach Breakwater landing, which is like the parking lot area, also in the Echeverria document. Then we have our Dune Path, which is the middle pass. That's not in the Echeverria document, but it is frequently used. Moving down, Burton Baker is in the document. So town owned. And then Hiawatha Road is foot only. And Omaha is aquaculture access. It's privately owned, but the town is in a butter. And I believe you guys are talking about that more later. So.
Okay, so I'm just going to take a minute to ask any questions, and I will make one clarification about the dike north and south. I'm not really sure, like, except for if you go on the right-hand side of the dike, so on the river side of the dike, you can kind of go down in the middle, go over the guardrails and down, and you're kind of on top of the dike. But as part of the Herring River Restoration Project, I know that Christina Andiaga is making sure that we will have landings incorporated to the redone dike. And I think that it's something that people can submit. Oops, I don't know why it's doing that. We can, submit letters.
Helen, I
They are
think
included in the restoration. So I just wanted to make that clarification. Does anybody, I see Helen has her hand raised.
Yes, to add to that, and this started when I was still on the Shellfish Advisory Committee with Barbara Austin. The Shellfish Advisory Committee was very clear that we also wanted access on the, shall we say, town side of the Chequesset Neck Dike. So not only on the riverside, the big place where there's going to be a parking lot and so forth, but also on the other side so that you didn't have to climb over the guardrail. There would be at least a little open path there. And this was brought up repeatedly, and it should be in there too. In other words, so that if people are able to harvest, if the DMF lets us harvest above the dike, right? Because there will be a set, right? If the water quality is good, that people can go down there and, harvest in the wild and bring it up without having to do, climbing over a guardrail. There'll be a little official path. So the committee really, pushed for that, and it's in the plan. Thank you.
Jordan, are you, or Nancy? You
Yes,
back
if
on?
there are no more questions, we can move on to the south map.
Whoop, I got a raised
Questions.
hand. Barbara?
Oh,
You're
you
muted.
guys are on mute.
You muted, Barbara. I'm muted.
If it's me, I don't have a question. I didn't raise my hand, so I'm muting again.
I have a question. When you say privately owned and there's a path, who maintains the path?
My guess is the people continually using it. Like kind of like a deer path.
But you're saying the shellfishers are using it?
Yes, I believe
Or-
so. Nancy's telling me to stop.
Who maintains the path? If it's privately owned, and how is it documented that it's a privately owned path and that there's access to it for the public?
Nancy has her hand up to answer.
Okay. No?
She's
Can you
having
hear
some
me?
technical issues. My guess would be that the private owners would be a part of maintaining the path, and the Shellfisherman Pass at the graciousness of the private landowners.
I understand graciousness, but trafficking of equipment and people causes damage, and there must be something that the private owners are doing to maintain their path.
I
Can you
wish,
hear me now? Can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, thank God. Sorry, it's like it says I'm unmuted, but so Barbara's going to have a question in a minute now that you can hear us. But to answer Ann Yudovich's question, in all the situations that we encounter on patrol, the paths in the areas that are on private property are exclusively managed by the private property owners, in a way that there's certain owners, like there's one on Compass Road, and this guy, wonderful gentleman down at the end of Richmond Lane, this is where I would like people to park. This is the path I would like them to use. And then it's just followed. But the maintenance is done by the private property owner, not the shell fisherman. So I hope that's clear. And then I'd like to pass it over to Barbara Austin to ask a question.
Okay, I'd like to ask about that piece of property that, Helen, you would remember this. John Dwayne worked on it a lot as more of a fisherman's landing, as in a fisherman's landing up by the Herring River Dike, where we would park along the side of the road, and we would use, it was going down next to a house and then using a staircase. Do you remember that, Helen?
Yeah, Helen?
Yeah, Barbara, you and I both remember that very clearly.
Helen, your mic is muffled.
You're kind of quiet.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Barbara, why did I not say something when we just went through that? Guess what? I found out fairly recently, and you're going to be as pissed, concerned about this as I am, that Paul Seeloff apparently sold it off. How that happened?
I thought we voted
How-
on that on town meeting.
Yes, we did.
Then how can someone vote on something at town meeting and have somebody sell it off without going back to town meeting?
So, hey, Barbara, you know what? That was, I think, when I was still on the committee, right? So I wasn't on the select board, right? And you understand why I am wanting to say things, shall we say, in a more angry way than I am right now in a public meeting. If you want to call me about it later, we can talk.
Well, there should
But-
be something we can do about it.
I'm not sure it's a done deal, but we should look into it and bring it to light at least, because you remember that we negotiated that very carefully,
Yeah, we did.
right?
Yeah. And we
Yeah,
spent a lot
and
of
it
time
was
on it.
great.
John spent hours and hours and hours to make sure that was maintained.
Yes, I remember the hours, which is why I said, I'm not pissed off at you, you know that. I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
pissed off at the situation. So
The other
that's
thing-
what happened to that. Okay,
just-
I should
I
ask
just
Nancy. You know what I'll do? I'll get permission to ask Nancy and get the answer to that and get back to this committee about it, including you, okay? How
Okay,
about
'cause
that?
I don't understand how something that we voted on at town meeting could be just completely changed without anyone's knowledge and sold off. I mean, that just sounds illegal to me. It doesn't sound right. The other thing
Yes, it sounds
I wanted to say to Ann, hello, Ann,
illegal.
is a lot of these places over the years that are private property that the fishermen use were used with a happy smiling face from the landowner, as in Dottie Downs, who we just lost last year. She's right on the Cove. She has a beautiful home. She's a long history Wellfleet person. And she absolutely loved having the fishermen park in her driveway so she could see them and talk to them and smile to them and watch the young people grow up and share her property with the community. So there's a lot of goodwill. There's a lot of goodwill people out there who enjoy the shell fishermen. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you.
Steve, I think someone had a hand up.
Yes, I just put something in the chat box. This is Barbara Brennisell. I'm on the Conservation Commission. I just want to mention that in that same vote at town meeting, Seeloff also sold off the town overlook on Ocean View Drive that people appreciated driving up to look at the ocean. He sold it to the abutter so they could extend his driveway. All of this was sort of hidden in some kind of a document that we voted on at some weary hour of town meeting, and people didn't really pay attention to the details of this, which is very unfortunate. But he sold off a lot of parcels to abutters that were access to the water for all of us.
I don't see it in the chat, Barb. So if there's something else that you think we should know, maybe email me or email the Rights Public Access Committee people.
Okay, I just put it
Oh,
in.
there it is, right there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, can I just say, Barbara, through you to both Barbaras, both of whom used to be on the Shellfish Committee when I was on it. that what Barbara Brennisel just said is, I'm afraid, what happened. And that is why summaries in town meeting warrants are so important. Because when you identify lots simply with numbers, right, and assessor map numbers, a lot of people don't understand what they're voting on. And I think, my guess is, so this is alleged, that he did it to balance the budget. In other words, he wanted to make money and he didn't understand the meaning of it. And he didn't go to the Shellfish Committee about it, for example. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Back to you, Nancy.
Okay, no more questions on north? Okay, I'm gonna share south and Jordan, take it away. Hold on. Share screen.
Okay, so moving into South Wellfleet, up there in the north, you can see Hiawatha and Omaha. And then we have Fox Island, which is at the very end of King Philip Road. That was not on the Echeverria document, but the abutter is Mass Division of Fish and Wildlife. And then kind of up to the north a little is Payne Hollow in the Echeverria document. Pleasant Point is also in the same document, as well as Mound Street, which is also called the Town Way to Water over there, and the MIA Memorial Park. And then into, sorry, where am I at? Down to Old Wharf Point. We have the Wellfleet Conservation Trust Audubon access point that's on the right-hand side of the road on Old Wharf. And then out to the end of Old Wharf Road, that is on the Echeverria document. And then south of that, at the end of Old Briarcliff Road, is called Old Tri-Works in the Echeverria document. And then out to Lieutenant Island, we have Compass Hill Road that is privately owned, and the owner has specific instructions for how he likes the shell fishermen to park and where he likes them to walk. And then moving down, there's a split rail fence on the right side of the road on Lieutenant Island Road right there. And then to the left of that is the Audubon access down south there. Moving up, we have the terrapin nests. That's what we call it. But it was also in the Echeverria document. Way 100 are also the osprey nest. And I believe you guys are talking about that one later as well. And then up to the north, we have the boathouse and a Logie Bay aquaculture access. They're kind of in the same area, but they are two different paths. And the boathouse is noted in the Echeverria document. Though I believe it is privately owned now. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then we have Lieutenant Island's Northwest, or the Steps, and then down to Meadow Ave, Lieutenant Island Southwest, and that is noted in the Echeverria document. And those are the landings that we have.
Are there any questions or feedback? Is there anything we missed from Shellfisherman?
Thank you, Nancy.
There you go.
I had a couple of suggestions for the committee, John Reel.
Yeah.
One is that we take this is excellent stuff. It's a terrific step forward. We take this and try to put some priorities of where we need to act. One way I thought of that was to set up a red, yellow, green system where the greens are the landings which are well secured and no action needed. The yellow are landings which are being used, but we need to keep an eye on for the future. And the red are things that need immediate action, such as we're talking about later. That's one way to go about it. The other way I hope we could make use of this is to look at where there are gaps, where there are places in the harbor where there are legal shellfish, but it's really difficult to get to, and what can we do about that? So that both of those clearly need the support of the Shellfish Advisory Board and the Shellfish Constable but I think it may help focus some of our future work.
Thank you, John. We done with that report? Any other comments? Then we're on to,
I just wanted to say, I think that's a good idea, John. And maybe, what do you think about maybe having a joint meeting with SAB to discuss it together?
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy. Oh, sorry.
I just see that Irene Payne has her hand up. May I have her go?
Steve?
oh, okay, Helen, or Irene, yes, Irene. Where'd you go?
You just need, she's right here. She just needs to unmute. There she is.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
You might know 20 years ago, I made the Wellfleet Ways to the Sea video with all of Duran Echeverria's research. And are you worried and focused on any of the landings out on Lieutenant's Island, I'm wondering? Because I see there's a few that were in his report that aren't listed anymore. And I know that erosion has actually taken away some of the roads out there. But like number 40, the Pond Avenue, it was called then. So maybe it's called something else now, 39 actually, on map number 40. It was number 39 on.
So number 39 is what we call the terrapin nest.
Oh, okay, all right. So there's new words, new,
Yeah,
new
we
names.
gave them
Okay.
different names, but we, in the document, if you go in blue writing, all of the points that we have, we've matched up to the point numbers in the document.
Okay, thank you. So I do have some old deeds and whatever, which I dug up during the process. So later, if somebody, wants to say, hey, do you have the deed to the Pleasant Point landing that all the Paynes signed off on or something like that?
That would be great.
I do have some documents floating around in my banker boxes, just to let you know.
Thank you.
And
Irene.
great work. I'm so glad you're doing this. And I'm also sad when I found out that, the Ocean View Drive place had been sold off. I was like, what? So yeah, because we did fight hard with that when Bill Dugan was the town manager. He fought hard to keep it open, and then to find later that it had been gone. Sort of like that, Anyway, I'm here. I live in Yarmouth now, but my brain is in Wellfleet. My feet are in Yarmouth. So anytime you want to ask me a question, I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene.
Barbara, Austin has a question for Irene, please.
Irene, I think I remember something now about another landing that isn't included, I don't think, on this document. That would be if you went in kind of like behind, down toward, if you were going down toward the Winslow's house by South Wellfleet, there behind the dentist's office on Drummer Cove, I think that comes in. There was a landing somewhere down there on the edge of the cove that you went off the side of the road, like if you were headed toward Dykeman's.
Yes, I have pictures of like a bathing beach down there, because there was up on Cannon Hill, it was called,
Right.
South Wellfleet. There were a lot of different guest houses. They could see right down to the railroad station and go down and pick up the people off the train, bring them up to the guest houses. And then they had a way to get down to what was a sandy beach down there at the time.
Wow.
So I don't know, I'd have to relook at everything, but I have lots of photos of people bathing down there when it was a sandy beach.
Interesting.
Now, if you're talking about like the very, very end,
I'm talking about up in Drummers Cove, way up in Drummers Cove, like behind
Okay.
the dentist's office, kind of,
Yeah.
basically. Down that hill, you'd pull off the side of the road and then you'd go down the hill. There's really not that much shellfish in there right now, but I used to access that for steamers when we had a big steamer set.
John has got a hand up.
I think we
it's either
may have located that. It's called the Cannon Hill Beach Landing. And it's used used by the local people for beaching and sunbathing, things like that. Difficult to get to otherwise. And I think there are no shellfish up there, Barbara, and that's probably the reason it's not on the document we've been looking at.
Should we still keep it on the document though, to make sure that it stays a access point? Like I say, there was shellfish up there at one point when we had a big steamer set many years ago, because I used to park there and use it to go dig the steamers.
So
Well, when
what-
I first found this, it was a piece of unowned property, and Nancy Vale has taken the steps to make sure it's town property. Whether
Oh,
you call
good.
it shellfish or not is up to you guys.
Cool.
All right, I'm gonna tell Barbara to take me there, because when I go down there, because I've only seen one person fishing down the end behind the dentist, and it was through somebody's yard, went over their deck. So I'd like to see where the actual the shellfishman's access point was, and we can certainly add it to this document.
Well, that's
So I'll
fine.
have Barb show me.
With global warming, as the seawaters rise, the shellfish are going to move all to different places.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, are we finally done with the department report? Oh, Helen, what you got?
I just want to add one thing that a lot of you know already, but which hasn't been stated, which is, first of all, it's remarkable what the Shellfish Department has done just with this map. But everybody should remember that not every town landing, which is an official, very important designation for a piece of land, is the same thing as a place where people have been harvesting and bringing ashore, in other words, landing what they've harvested. And that happens in a variety of ways. So these are all, as it were, landings, right? But not all of them are legally possible, except by the graciousness, to use Ms. Yao's term, of private property owners who are generally very supportive. And the really cool thing is that for the most part in this town, people are supportive of this industry, and the people that use these landings, which are not official town landings, are considerate. And it's really a beautiful thing. It's the way things should be. That said, there's another issue, which is a lot of the town landings that are legally the towns, right, are sometimes accessed along private ways. And the use of those ways is, again, something that happens with a supportive, good graciousness feeling from the people who could close them. And I'm just really glad, as one person in the town who supports the shellfishing industry, that this is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Any other comments on Shellfish Department report? Okay. Sonia, are we going to do the budget request? You're muted. There you go.
Okay. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so just an update on that. I did send through an email a couple weeks ago with that request. I didn't hear anything back. So I checked in with them again and they said they didn't receive the email. I sent it to Maria. So I resent it in. So we wait to hear back on that. It's pending. So.
Okay. So we're on to the next item, and that's the report of our site visit.
Mhm.
It was Monday. And there were some references to the boathouse and Way 100 on Lieutenant Island just recently. We looked at all three places and have some comments. Who would you like? Sonia, would you like to?
Sure, I can try to cover it. We started with the boathouse. And is David Agger here today? Did he?
Yes.
Is he here? Okay.
Yeah.
So we just kind of had a look at Heron Point Road, we were just trying to understand, there was some discrepancy with the mapping. As in there's the paper road on the map versus the satellite road. And basically what we were noticing is that that road that's in place right now is sort of between the Heron Point Road, which is within subdivision property, and on the other side of that paper road is Audubon. So the current road that's there is kind of ends up in between properties a bit. And then the other issue out there is the access point at the boathouse, which is actually that property at the boathouse is owned by the Aggers. They wanted to be able to offer the town an easement through the property to allow public access. But the issue was there was a portion of land at the end of that, is at the end of Heron Point Road, is that correct? That turnaround that's there. Just trying to explain this correctly. The town had at one point registered a landing there, but it was never officially registered with the Barnstable Registry of Deeds. So now there, it wasn't registered, so it's just the sort of no man's land at the end of Heron Point Road. So the issue would be that even if they offered an easement through their property, it still wouldn't guarantee access because there's a small portion of land there that nobody owns in between Audubon property and that private property. So, we're trying to discuss ways to solve that issue. I know that David Agger mentioned that the town had offered to purchase his property. The issue that he had with it was that he has an arrangement with, is it Jason and Elizabeth, who are grant holders, and they store equipment in the boathouse. So he wanted to maintain that situation that agreement that they have to store things in the boathouse. But at that time, someone on town council had told him that that would be a liability. So then he didn't want to partake in that sale. So, I don't know if that's something that could be revisited, but, at this point, basically those are the options. It's a little bit confusing, but yeah, I'd either be looking for an easement through his property or the potential for the town to purchase that property, the boathouse. Is that correct, Nancy? I just want to make sure is she there?
I sorry. I think Barbara's trying to say she stepped out.
Okay.
Go ahead,
But
Melissa.
I had a different understanding, and maybe we can try to clarify it better.
Okay.
I thought that the end of Heron Point Road is a cul-de-sac, and so the sand trail that goes through the dune that starts at the fence where everybody parks is actually on the road. So whoever owns the road has the right to use that sand trail. And then the other half of the sand trail is on the Agger property. So securing an easement with the Agger property still wouldn't guarantee us access because the other half of the sand trail on the Heron Point Road is whoever owns the land has the right to use it. And we don't know if the public does.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know.
It sounds reasonable. Tanya, you were looking at the maps too. I think I know what you're talking about, Melissa. The old circle, the turnabout is actually nowhere near where the actual people turn around now. And the trail goes across the paper road part and then finally into the Aggers property. So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I could be wrong too, but I thought that the landing was between perhaps the Agger property and the Audubon land, and then when something happened with, I mean, the deed was never registered for the town landing, so then now maybe the Aggers and the Audubon own that space now. I don't know if that's correct.
Look, if I may just interject, looking at the town map, it looks as though the landward side of the trail crosses the cul-de-sac and ends up in Audubon property. We may need, it sounds as though we need to verify that. But that's how I read the map. So if we had if I was correct and we had the approval of Audubon to go through there, then we made a step forward. We have to verify it.
Well, there was two paths, correct, Melissa? There's one path that heads off to the right, and that is all through Audubon, I believe. I haven't got the map in front, actually, you can pull it in front, but that cuts through Audubon property, but it's the footpath on the left that we're discussing that's an issue because there's a portion of property in between the private property and what's Audubon.
I was referring to the one on the left. I don't think there's any issue with the one on the right.
Yeah, the one on the right is fine.
We were talking about David, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple points of clarification. I think Sonia described the history and the situation very well. I just add a couple things that actually there was never a ruling or a decision made by town council. It was a member of the Wealthy Conservation Commission who happened to be a lawyer who was concerned about if the town bought our property and maintained the boathouse as it currently is, that would be a liability. So it never went to town council. And I believe currently the Open Space Committee, as a fallback position, said, well, what if we just buy access through the property? And they are still thinking about doing that, but it's the same issue that you all are grappling with in terms of how do you get from the turnaround to the path, in terms of who owns that. So I think Bruce Herder was sort of stumped and looking at that piece of that. And then one last piece, if you go from the turnaround where the cars are parked and you head towards the boathouse beach and the boathouse, after about 30 feet, there is a trail, the trail splits around a big beach plum hill. And to the right is Audubon, and to going straight or left is going through our property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. We also kind of discussed the fact that the maps that we looked at were a little ambiguous about where the actual road is versus where the paper road is. And maybe the maps are wrong. I mean, there, for instance, one thing showed the dashed line where the actual road is supposed to be, nowhere near where the satellite view showed the actual road. So we had also talked about maybe needing some surveyor's help to try and clarify where the actual road is and whose property it's on. Helen?
Yeah, the first place to look is the assessor's map. In other words, paper roads in subdivisions are laid out very precisely and surveyed. That's how you get to have your subdivision plan approved or your approval not required plan approved. And very often on the assessor's map, you see a way that is indicated with what I call stitch lines, right? It's not a solid line. And that is where the actual road might be. Not always easy to see with the satellite map, satellite photo map because of trees and so forth. So the first place to look is the assessor's map. And then you can determine, who owns that. But chances are if it's in a subdivision, that's privately owned. Even if it's in the middle of the woods, a laid out subdivision way cannot be built on and cannot be obstructed, even if it's never used ever as a road in any way, unless it goes back to the planning board and they say, okay, you can block off that road or take it off the map. That's all I know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. So we haven't come to any resolution, but I guess that's not surprising. So go ahead, Sonia. Are you, oh, that was your ding and your.
Oh, yeah, that was a notification. Sorry.
Okay, so anyway, what do you think about, go ahead, Melissa.
Sorry, I think what David said about the way that Bruce was pursuing the easement and how he came to the roadblock of who owns the road because it's part of the Dune Trail, that's probably our a problem that we have to tackle. Who owns Heron Point Road? We know that it's we think it's part of a subdivision. There are inconsistencies in the plans, but it probably requires legal counsel to figure out. So I think it'll be important for us to figure that out, but maybe after the surveyor. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I would agree that the survey might be important right away to find out where the actual path is with respect to the way from the plan, or Heron Point Road as it's drawn on the maps.
I would just reverse things. I think it might be useful to talk with town-approved council to be sure that the questions we ask of the surveyor are the pertinent ones in resolving the issue. I hate to have a surveyor go and make a bunch of measurements and then the lawyer say, well, we should have done X instead of Y.
So maybe ask who owns it first.
Excuse me?
Right. What are you asking? Or you're saying that we should ask this question before the surveyor?
I think we should put the problem before council and let the council guide us on the steps needed to resolve it.
Okay.
Okay.
Helen's got her hand up.
That sounds good. And Helen,
Sorry. My dear committee members, it has been surveyed already. That's what has to happen before you have a subdivision plan. That surveying is already on the books and it stands unless it goes back to the planning board. So that's something that will come up maybe later in one of the other agenda items, but that's for sure. Okay, it doesn't have to be resurveyed. Thank you.
the problem that I see, Helen, is yes, there is a survey and the maps all draw it, but we don't know where the actual path is with respect to the surveyed path. And
Steve, I agree with you. I think that's the problem, is we have to know where it is we walk is.
yes.
Waving her hand again, or she's no.
Irene, you got your hand up, but you're muted. You're muted, Irene.
How about this?
That's good.
Okay. Weirdly enough, I'm sort of a person who goes from way back to now. And I know Lieutenant's Island was totally surveyed in the late 1800s by land speculators, because there was a huge, surge, as you've probably seen the old map. Have you? Of all the tiny little lots that they made out there, because they expected, many people to come and buy a tiny little lot and build a stamp-sized cottage. And then there was the big crash. And so the speculators didn't pay their taxes. And so the town of Wellfleet took practically the whole island as tax taking, as you probably know all that. And so there from then, they sold land parcels to people. But there were still roads all over the island, which they probably didn't sell, and they should probably be considered as town roads. And at the end of every road, there was the water. So it's kind of hard to sell off a town a town shoreline and a road to the water. So that's why so many of the places that are sort of being claimed by people who build houses right next to them or where they used to be or whatever. I know places all over town that are like that. So I don't know, you might want to start from the back and work forward, because people who start forward and go back, they might only go back 50 years. You might need to go back 100 years is what I'm saying. That's all.
Thank you, Irene. The maps that we're looking at are not the original ones with all the little tiny stuff. But I don't know. I assume there's been another plan done, maybe, Melissa?
Sorry, you can keep going.
I can show you that map if you would like to quickly see it.
Okay, go ahead, Nancy.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that map bears no relationship to what the road is, the Heron Point Road. In fact, it doesn't even have Heron Point Road on it, I don't think. So
1889.
that I don't think is useful.
Okay.
Excuse me, can I speak?
Yep. go ahead.
Irene, what you just told me, Irene,
Yes.
this is Helen. What you just told me is really interesting to me.
Mm.
What you just showed, because I didn't know the town had bought anything up there.
I think
Okay,
They
That's
took it
huge.
as tax taking. They owned it at one
Yeah.
point, and then they sold
But
off.
wait a minute. What I'm going to here is this. What Irene just showed is a perfectly standard subdivision map. Now, this is going to come up later, but all those lots, if they were sold before a certain point, come under one status under the subdivision control law. But ways in a subdivision are usable by people, by individuals, like, or corporations. Remember, the Supreme Court said that a corporation is a person, and the town of Wellfleet is a corporation. And if we still own land there, if it hasn't all been sold off, I think there was something with Bob Lesser back in the day, we have rights in that subdivision that I have only just heard about for the first time. So that really needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I don't know how to share things, but this is a map that shows a road that's not on that previous layout. And I don't, this is called Subdivision Plan of Land in Wellfleet, Mass. Cape Cod Realty and Builders, 1967. So there's been some surveys that have been done since that original one in 1888, whenever it was, for what that's worth. Okay, are we done? Are we done with the boathouse, or is there more discussion? Melissa, what do you have?
I just wanted to mention, I think there's another subdivision plan that does not include the parcel of the Aggers, I believe, or the town landing. But that's where the inconsistencies are, and I think only a lawyer can really say. But I would also mention that in 2005, there was a, I can't remember the name of the group, but there's an inventory of town-owned parcels and ways, which I had forwarded to you guys. And it includes the town landing at the end of Heron Point Road, and also says that Heron Point Road is a public road. And that's in 2005. But I don't know if there's an error there. I don't know. I don't think we can really know without a lawyer. But I think it's worth asking.
Yeah, didn't Ryan Curley send us some information regarding a landing being established there? And it was, I want to say it was in the 60s or something like that it was established. And then he also sent us I'll have to go through my documents here, but there was also town meeting at some point where they discussed it as well as a landing, being approved for a landing. Did you see that document as well?
Yeah, they had to make it a landing to rebuild Lieutenant Island Road.
And the stuff that we got from Ryan Curley, so
Okay, that's the one with the landing. Yep.
photos of sketches.
Okay, so that's the turnaround that we're looking at on a map is at the end there, the town where it says town landing.
Yes. Oh, it doesn't actually
Can
show.
you hold that up a little closer, Steve? So we can look at that? Closer? It's town landing and like basically the boathouse entrances. Right
Yeah.
there. Thank you.
Well, isn't the problem with that it never got registered in Barnstable?
That quite possible.
Yeah, I think that was the issue, that it didn't get registered.
And this is
But,
1962, 1963 are the dates on that.
Can we register it now?
I believe the deed to that site is now owned by the Agris and the Audubon.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I also, Ryan had told me that a public road can only be discontinued at a town meeting. So if we can go through the records of the town meetings, we might find that they never discontinued it and it may in fact still be public. So we can look into that, but I think, again, I think we're gonna have to ask a lawyer to confirm. So maybe we should just resolve this today by asking that. What does everybody think?
Well, in our last meeting, we talked about drafting questions for town council. So, and I had a feeling we were going to kind of add to that list during this meeting. So I kind of held off for now. So maybe we can kind of add that to a running list of questions that we need to ask the lawyer right now to kind of get involved. I feel like this issue in particular, we definitely need help from a lawyer, just understanding whether the landing has status or whether the public has a way to that landing or whatever is happening. So yeah, moving forward, I suppose I could kind of continue that project with drafting questions and include the boathouse in there. And in the meanwhile, I would think we can just do research for now to understand,
Yeah.
the history of the location.
Yeah, hopefully the council would be able to find the most current records of that area, surveys and so forth. Okay, have we taken care of the boathouse? Any other comments on boat? Melissa, go ahead.
Can I make a motion that we start a document to list all the legal questions we want to answer? We need to do that.
Anybody second that? I have a motion. Anybody seconding?
I second.
Okay, Sonia. Now, that's a kind of an open-ended thing. So is that kind of okay in our world to just say, we have a motion we're going to add to our town council request, information request?
Let me add what I think would be the process is that we, perhaps all we have to do at the next meeting, Melissa, is to finalize a list of questions. And then the motion at the next meeting would be to ask the town administrator that we ask the town administrator if we can set up a meeting with council to discuss our questions and be sure that the lawyer understands what we're trying to get at, and then proceed from there.
Okay.
So I'm not sure we need a motion now, but we sure will at the next meeting.
Yeah, because I'm still new to all this. In terms of the last meeting, we took a vote, right, to draft legal questions. So does that still
So we're still doing that.
Yeah, okay.
Can I just say something, please, Steve? Steve?
You're muted, Steve.
Okay, here we are. Phone's ringing all over the place. Helen, what's
Sorry
that?
about that. I'd like to, that's what you're gonna do. That's, you guys, fine, good. Town council, but I want to remind you something. So the select board sent 3 very carefully crafted questions to town council, and it took them months to get back to us. There is something you could do in the meantime. Ryan is right. In order for the town to, release a road as a town way, there has to be a vote. And there also has to be a vote to accept a road as a town way. There's sort of an interesting little back and forth process between the select board and town meeting. If you shared out the years and went to annual town reports, and Ryan Curley found that there is actually a digital archive back to, I believe, 2013. But they're, the books of the town reports in the library. I've got quite a few of them here that Barbara Cheveria gave me when she left town. You can say, okay, Sonia, you're going to do 7 of these years and somebody else is going to do 7. You could go through the town reports and look at all the votes, and you could find this out a whole lot quicker, okay? I'm just saying, I've done that kind of thing. It takes a while, but it doesn't take as long as waiting for town council to get back, right, to you. And it also, that's basically a version of what they're going to do. Thank you. Just saying.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like that's something we can do now for sure. Just do some research and look at history at this point.
Okay, so we've got an action plan. I don't think we need a motion for that. Thank you, Helen, for the advice. And we have to, amongst ourselves, figure out what we're going to look at. So I think what you're saying, Helen, is that we could do the work that the lawyer would be doing faster and cheaper.
I'm also saying, give that a try first, because that will do 2 things. It may answer the question before. I did that kind of work before I brought the questions to the select board and we decided to send them to town council. The other benefit of a group of you from this committee doing that is that you will find out things you don't know now just by going through those annual reports that will be useful to you, believe it or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen. I think we've beat the boathouse to death. How about Way 100?
All right.
Sonia, you want to?
Sure. So Way 100 we visited as well. David Agger also has a property on that road. The situation there is that there is a shellfishing access point. It's not Way 100, but it's like a way off of Way 100 in front of those 2 parcels that shellfishermen use to get out to the flats in Lieutenant. Currently, there's a muddy ditch on that road, which is causing, I think there's concerns over erosion into the marsh. Audubon is in a butter on the other side of the private properties there. That road is used for shellfishing with the permission of private property owners, but the road is in disrepair at the moment, and it looks like it, could potentially be unusable in the future, going the way it is. So we're actually looking at just solutions of maintaining access in that area and protecting that road as it stands right now. We did look at potential future access to the tide flats using Way 100, which actually goes up a hill and to town conservation land. Is that parcel 152? Pull the map up in front of me. 152, yep. So parcel 152 off of Way 100 is conservation land. So we weren't sure if maybe that's something we can pursue in the future as an access point. During our visit, we did take into account that that parcel is up a hill, so that might be problematic for shell fishermen. You know, we were saying that that just might be too difficult to actually pull shellfish up a hill, so it might not be the best alternative, but it might be something to look at in the future. But for now, what we were thinking of doing to solve the issues of that road is the property owners had noted that vehicles drive down that road potentially thinking there's beach access or something and then often turn around. So we are wondering if there's a way to just kind of reduce that passage on the road and try to keep the road as more of a shellfish access point. One of the property owners, Lori, she had mentioned potentially putting up a gate to keep people from entering that road. We also mentioned the idea of putting up some sort of a signage to prevent people from going down that road. And I think, you know, we could probably all discuss this, but we think that the signage might be a simpler solution at this point. You know, we would need to decide on what the sign would say, whether it be no beach access or fragile environment. But we think that a sign might be the best solution at this point, just to keep people from going down the road. The other thing we noted as well is that Audubon is in a butter to those private lots. So that might be something that Audubon may have interest in contributing, you know, because it is actually the marsh that's being damaged to the left of the road. So we're looking to get in contact with Melissa Lowe to see if that's something they'd be interested in installing.
It does seem like we should do signs first. They don't cost too much. Mm-hmm. Probably not too many legal problems with putting them up, although there may be some. And if that does keep casual drivers out of that area, that would be a help. And if it doesn't work, then maybe we have to take up the issue again and get something. But also, should we try and see if we can fix that pothole or that muddy area? Is that something that we should do, or are all shell fishermen able to drive through that?
I think we just, you know, we had a little bit of discussion there at the meeting. That mud hole also does work as a deterrent. So, you know, it's not nearly as deep as the mud hole on the other side of the bridge, which is like very problematic. It's deep and it fills with seawater, quite a couple feet. This is actually just more of a muddy situation. So I would think it should be a deterrent.
So we'll leave the mud hole as
yeah, we discussed that filling it may not really, you know, it would probably just erode away because it fills with seawater. So any efforts to repair it might not really work.
Melissa, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that where the muddy ditch is and where the road passes is actually in the parcel that is private property owned by David Agger and Sharon Agger and Laura Rudifer. So it would have to be up to them. And I don't know, David, if you want to comment, but I think I had spoken with him at the site visit, and I don't think he was interested in filling it.
I'm sorry, you don't think what, Melissa?
Oh, he's trying to comment.
Yeah, I would say that Sharon and I do not support the idea of repairing the mud hole in front of, well, between our properties and our neighbors for one of the reasons that Sonia mentioned. I think it does act as a deterrent. And two, I think the tide comes in so strongly periodically that it would just remove it after a couple of high tides. So we don't support that idea, but because I think the shell fishing people will get through, and they're pretty smart. I mean, they're cautious and conservative in terms of how they use that area. So no, we don't support that.
Thank you, David. So repair is off the list. Go ahead, Melissa.
Sorry. Through you, Steve, to David. would you be supportive of some sort of barrier? Sonia mentioned a gate, potentially a rope fence, just to discourage the general public and maybe still allow shell fishermen?
Yeah, Sharon and I would support that. I think a sign is a good idea. I think a rope, as opposed to a full-fledged gate, but we would defer to you in terms of what you want. I guess technically or legally, that's probably on our neighbor's property as a part of ours. But in terms of accessing our garage and the front of our house, yeah, we support that. Yes.
And I would mention too that the Mass Audubon is already going to install posts with rope at the southwest corner, so we could maybe coordinate with them and ask how they're doing it and try to do something the same. We could even have the same kind of signage if they'd be interested in that.
Question for the shell fishermen. How frequently is this access used? Is it quite frequently? Once a week, once a month?
I would say most of the access points in Lieutenant are, require a considerable amount of walking.
Yeah.
So I don't find any of those spots to be heavily trafficked. I don't know, you might find one car per spot, right, at a time, sometimes two.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not the easiest spots to work from. So there aren't often a lot of shell fishermen there.
But Sonia, what I hear from that is they're used on a daily basis, which is a significant amount of use.
I don't think they are.
Yeah,
I think Nancy might be able to comment.
Well, I was just going to say that it gets used by both recreational and commercial fishermen. In particular, like I can probably name, 5 different people from the recreational community that park on that road that we're talking about now.
Okay.
And it's only really, it's open year round for commercial, but it closes June to September for oystering. So you can only clam down on the south side of Lieutenant Island commercially in the summer. So there's not a lot of user conflicts because in the winter, there's not a lot of, other people, walkers, other people around. And so it really, I've seen it just get used by the shell fishing public. And then, October 1, it opens for oystering and it opens to the recreational shell fishermen. So it gets used in the winter.
Thank you, Nancy.
And the public could still access that area anyway, because there's kind of parking on the other side of the road. If we talked about landings, it was at that terrapin point, whatever. There's a couple parking spaces, so people could still walk to the area. Putting up a rope or anything like that wouldn't mean that people couldn't enjoy the area on foot.
Melissa?
I think Barbara made a comment in the chat. She meant, I don't know, Barbara, if you want to speak, but sea level rise was an important point that we had made in the previous meeting, and Way 100 was a way to maybe still have access if anything were to happen to the lower Marsh Way. And we do try to be respectful of the marsh, but it does, not easy.
Okay. Anything else on Way 100? I see nothing. So are we ready to go to Field Point, Bucks Island? Our third and last site that we visited on Monday. And Sonia, you want to take it over there too?
Yeah, sure. And I'm glad Barbara's here because I have questions regarding usage of this area in the past. But we did go and visit Field Point at the end of King Philip Road. It's Mass Division of Wildlife property at the end there. There is a small parking area, and a path that goes out to the beach. And I have heard rumors in the past that vehicles did use that. It looks like a footpath now, but at one point, I think vehicles did occasionally pass. So my question was, being that there's all these issues with Omaha Road and that being the one point to access all of the grants out on Indian Neck, I guess just looking at that point, I wondered if there's a way that some vehicles could access the grants from that spot. And I know that's an issue with conservation and with the state, but it's something we just kind of wanted to have a look at. So we did go visit the site just so we can get a visual of that way onto the beach and whether it's problematic. But from the visual we got, it looks like it could be a way onto the beach. I mean, it doesn't look like there's marsh passing across it or anything like that. So, but yeah, I was wondering, Barbara, do you recall that spot being used?
Yeah, I recall it being used very infrequently, but I happened to run into Michael Pallanti this morning down at the herring run. He was clearing it out a little bit, and we started talking about this meeting. And Michael Pallanti is somebody who remembers that being used openly to access grants and for fishermen down on that end. So he was really good friends with Etch, and he was the Shellfish Advisory chairperson for, I think, close to 20 years. So he's a wealth of information when it comes to old maps and rights to the bay. And I think if you could get a hold of Michael Pallanti, he would really be have a lot of information that might be useful for this committee.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Steve, you're muted.
Who got muted?
Who put the boulders up there that prevent?
I think the homeowners association put that big boulder up there because there was a big sign there that said Field Point State Recreational Area, and that big sign disappeared and the boulder appeared. So there's been there's been back and forth about who actually owns that parking lot. Some of the homeowners didn't want people parking there and claimed that it was part of the association's parking lot. But then other people said it belonged to the state. So I think there's a lot of questions about that I personally don't know the answer to.
And I think that's what we want to, as a committee, look into as well. It's accessed by King Philip Road. I'm still trying to understand that whole situation, with the town ownership of the grants on Indian Neck, and what points of access does the town have to that land? Is King Philip Road considered an access to that land? I understand that Hiawatha is, but there's clearly no way a vehicle could use Hiawatha. So
when they put that I remember at Shellfish Advisory when they put the seawall in on the Hiawatha side when the Backs bought that property, it was put in the order of conditions that would be that wall would either have to be removed or made so a vehicle could access over that wall and then across Sue's Gutter. But we've never wanted to use that access or the access on Burton Baker Beach because then we have to cross Sue's Gutter, which is crossing where the bottom could possibly get it sketchy and where there's people recreating on the beach. We don't want to be driving across areas where there's hordes of children and umbrellas and all that stuff. We want to be
right, and nobody wants to lose a truck. That's not good.
Exactly. And now that the town owns the beach, I'm wondering how it works where the homeowners, when they rebuild, when they have the sand brought in there and they do wall work and all the revetments, they're actually driving on town property. There's been a lot of sand renourishment going on down there lately, which is fantastic, and it needs to be done for their order conditions. But now, do they have to ask the town for permission to use the beach in order to, Helen, you might know that.
Or Barbara.
Helen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Barbara Brennisel also knows this because she's on the Conservation Commission. And for those of you who don't know, She was on the Shellfish Advisory Committee for years. So if anybody wants to do anything on the beach like that, they have to ask the conscom. You want to re-nourish? You want to have equipment there? You got to ask the conscom. Their jurisdiction is, you know, whatever's wet and 100 feet from it landward. The other thing is, Barbara Austin, I'm not sure if you've seen the quitclaim deed for the Hadelta property that the town bought, but in it, whoever owns it has an, you know, rights to use and King Philip Road and Hiawatha. Now, it's a little confusing to me because Ryan Curley unearthed the fact that the subdivision that includes Hiawatha is not part of the subdivision that includes Omaha and a good part of King Philip. But in any case, on the quitclaim deed, which I can copy you all with, I think the committee has it. I sent it to Jim Falcone. Do you guys not all have that? The quitclaim deed for the Hadelta property that the town bought?
I don't think we do.
Okay, I'll resend it. Anyway, point is, King Philip's on there, Sonia, to answer your query about that. Thank you.
Irene, you had your hand up. Anne, I'm sorry. You're muted. Muted.
There we go. I had a couple comments. First of all, at the far end of King Philip, I don't think the homeowners put that boulder. I think that went in when the state took over that property, which was a long time ago. But the state wanted to conserve it. The homeowners were confused until pretty recently about who owned the parking lot. That's, I think, Barbara, you're right about that. But because of over parking last summer, we looked into it more. And I think Ryan showed us information that said that the state owns the actual lot, that little turnaround at the end of King Philip, but that the homeowners then own the road leading up to it. Or maybe the state owns one side and the homeowners own the other side. So I think getting that boulder moved and reopening that as access is going to be an issue to negotiate with the state on that end. That's one thing. Wait, there was something else that got mentioned, but I'll remember it soon.
And then I would think as well, so the town does have access to the grants via King Philip, but that would be something also to just work out with the homeowners association as well to see what people think if that were ever to happen. Because obviously then that road would be used by trucks. My idea, I guess, in the future would be that, you know, would there be a solution to take some of the traffic off of Omaha and maybe spread it out in a way so that Omaha would be a little bit less problematic. So
yeah,
I don't know.
it's an interesting thought. What I wanted to say was about the nourishment. That nourishment is done at least on the Omaha road side and going up along King Philip. In other words, if you turn left on the beach instead of right, that's all required by Conscom. It's not something that people are just doing for fun. And and I think on the other side, I don't know on the Hiawatha side how that works, but their nourishment goes on every winter, and it's it is a lot of truck and traffic over there and big vehicles going up and down that spot.
John?
Steve, in good discussion. I would like to explain why, to clarify not only who owns the parking lot, but who owns the path that we're talking about, and who owns the beach in front of Fox Island Marsh. And the reason is that Fox Island Marsh is state owned, therefore it's public. And someone told me once, I can't remember whom or under what circumstances, that because it's a public state land, there are different rules of rights of citizens to access that. That is, the citizens have rights to access that road, that land. And I think that implies, among other things, that citizens have the right to drive down the private road that leads to the marsh because of these access rights. Now, I could easily have heard the wrong thing or heard only what I wanted to hear, but that's what I remember hearing.
Okay, thank you. Barbara?
I would suggest that you folks contact the state because the Conservation Commission is contacting them as well about boat storage there because folks are leaving vessels on the vegetation and there's a lot of erosion going on down there. And I was told that they need to go out and resurvey it to find out what part of that parcel they can actually control and what parts belong to other people or other agencies. In their description of that Fox Island conservation area, they describe a parking lot that's part of the state parcel and also a footpath to the beach, not a driving path. So in their official document, which you can find online describing the conservation area, that's what they describe as far as access, a parking lot and a footpath. But I think you really need to contact the state. They said they were going to resurvey it this season and put a new sign up. I haven't seen that anything's happened yet.
Barbara, whom at the state would you contact?
I contacted someone called Jason Zimmer. There's an info. If you go to Fox Island Conservation, you go
Okay, fair enough.
to info, but he's the one who responded to me saying that they were going to resurvey and put a sign up and work with the town about vessel storage. I think they could work with the town about the access issue as well.
Great. All right. Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, I pulled up the just the website, the Mass Division of Wildlife there, and there's some contact information as well. So I may try to go through there or look up this name. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments about Field Point, Fox Island? Can we move on to item 6, which is the legal opinion that was obtained by the select board on Omaha Road. And Helen, would you like to discuss that?
Well, sorry. Okay, so you've all read the letter, right?
Yes.
Yes. I had the question that John just brought up because I'd heard it. I'd not read anything, no citations, no legal opinions about if there's public land, and remember the property that the town bought in 2019 includes over a mile of beach, which is now a public beach. And it includes an intertidal area that the town owns that's used for harvesting shellfish in one way or another. So that's all public. The beach is more public than the intertidal area used for shellfishing because that has certain restrictions on it, because they're farms and so forth. But in any case, I'd heard that if you were getting to public property of that sort, let's just talk about the beach, okay? That you could go over a private road to do it, but I'd only heard it. And so the questions that were sent to town council were, what is our status now, the town's status, as at the very least an abutter to this subdivision that has all these private ways, including Omaha Road, right? And we needed to know that, and it would have been nice if we had been considered part of the subdivision so that we would have had some way to use those private ways as members of the subdivision. But what the two lawyers from town council researched and came to the conclusion of is, this is important, that intertidal land, right, which I'll refer to as the Hidilta property, which the town bought, was once part of an enormous piece of land that was not divided up, okay? And the intertidal land, which goes right up to the bottom of that scarp, that dune, that upland, was part of the upland by virtue of a colonial ordinance that gave upland owners property rights, ownership out to a certain point, the low tide mark, or I think it's either 1650 rods, 1,000 rods, I forget, but it's a ways out, right? Sorry, I don't remember it, or the low tide mark. And what was interesting is that first subdivision plan did not include that part of the original giant property. Therefore, it was not part of that subdivision plan, and therefore was not a lot that could access the private roads. But if you reread that letter carefully, and I was impressed with the lawyer that came onto the second call about that matter. And on that second call, there was Katie Klein, who's one of the attorneys for KP Law, and a retired judge called Judith Cutler, who impressed me because that was her specialty, was subdivisions and this kind of land use. And she said, she confirmed what I feared or thought, really. I just wanted to know, we all wanted to know, what was the status of the town in relation to, say, Omaha Road, or anywhere in relation to a subdivision road, which is a private road, correct? So we got the answer, and then she suggested something. And at this point, I would like to ask through you, Steve, to Ann Sterling. And Ann Sterling, for those of you who don't know, is the president of the Homeowners Association for the subdivision called Cape Land Subdivision, which is the subdivision that abuts this big intertidal property. So Ann, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Here's the question. Are you all over there, the Homeowners Association, have you been discussing in any way perhaps granting the town an easement, letting the town buy an easement, doing anything like that, or considering?
Yeah, no, I think the answer is nothing that formal. That is, we discuss the issue every year at our annual meeting. It gets very mixed up with the problem of parking, most of which is not the shell fishermen. The shell fishermen pass through, but they don't park. But the road gets so clogged with people parking during the summer that it's all mixed together. And then there are little, clusters where someone blocks the road, and then the shell fishermen can't get through, and they have to go find who's ever lying on the beach and get them to move their car. And so I think the sense of the homeowners has been for the last decade that the shell fishermen are welcome to use the road. There is also a wish that the town would take some responsibility in monitoring the parking. And we've always been caught in this thing where the police won't deal with the parking because they say it's a private road, et cetera, et cetera. But there's never been a formal solution proposed. And the other thing to remind everybody of is that we, as a homeowners association, pay to have that road graded once a year and have it plowed in the winter. So we actually are maintaining access for the shell fishermen. And Omaha gets pretty beat up by the end of the winter because of all sorts of traffic. The shell fishermen are a big contributor, but not the only ones. These huge vehicles that go to do the nourishment, which is required by Conscom, are other problems, and then just the rains and whatever cause it. So those things get discussed every year, but we've never talked, I think, in any proper way about a formal easement. And I think the way to make that happen is, well, and there's another complication, which is that there's a question of the road probably, did get a legal opinion, is probably owned by the actual homeowner or abutters, but the entire association is paying for the road maintenance and expects to be able to use the road to get themselves down to the beach. We've always felt that a couple of parking spaces for people who are no longer able to walk would be good. But lately it's so hard to park down there, and people have been driving stuff down, leaving people off, and then moving their cars back home. So the question of how that all might work together in a formal proposal has never really been discussed. And I think a formal proposal would be a starting point that ought to include the elements of easement, but also the town taking some responsibility for enforcing parking and some contribution to the maintenance cost.
Steve, may I respond to that?
Yes, yes. Please.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I'm going to say something that I should have said right up front. I'm here as not a delegate of the select board. I'm here because this is one of the issues that really interests me. So when I say things, I'm not representing the select board, okay? I mean, that's very, very important. So one of the things that we established, the town established, this is even back, geez, it keeps coming up, the parking there in the summer, it's dangerous. People who don't have permits, and put it all very well. There are people who live in that neighborhood who have an actual legal right to use that road and to park on the side of it in the layout, and they can't even do it. And anyway, it's not a good situation. And the town can't enforce it because it's private. It's not that we're being awful. Okay. Right. It's that legally we can't put signs up there. We can't enforce it. Legal counsel was consulted more than once. The departments are clear about it. Everybody's frustrated. And if there was a possible easement with, of course, conditions and the overlying context that when you share a road, never mind laws, regulations, whatever, you got to be considerate, right? You got to be considerate. So if the people are going out to the flats, they got to be considerate. If the homeowners are using the road, they got to be considerate, and it's all important to be sharing the responsibility in a careful, good way and communicating. So I'm wondering if what I'm going to do is to bring to the select board the idea of offering to the homeowners association the possibility of having an easement that could be very specific, right, in return for being able to enforce on that road in the summer. Because it's something that also impacts the town, you see. Yeah. And, I've been out there with the fire chief at one point. I think we went out together, I can't remember, but looking at places where there might be within the layout of that Omaha road, maybe 3 or 4 parking places, designated just for that and carefully done so that they're on the land side and they're not chewing the road up. In other words, something might be done legally that would be win-win for everybody, because it's gotten worse, all of this. The parking situation has gotten worse. And anyway, that's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
Yeah. So the other thing that has made it worse is that everybody's vehicles are bigger. So back in the day, when the shell fishermen went through in a much smaller size pickup and there was no huge trailer on the side. So yeah, I mean, I think if we could come up with a proposal, then I could bring it to our homeowners association, and I'm sure with 56 families involved, there will be very varying opinions about it. But I think it could, I would be optimistic that something could be negotiated. It might take a significant back and forth to make it look right. And there is, for the town, there is a safety issue because it's a town beach, and the times when safety vehicles are blocked. I mean, last June, I guess it was, as I think you know, Helen, one of the fire trucks, rescue trucks, got stuck in the sand there, which had been worn down because of vehicles backing into a private owner's driveway. And they had a really sick person on their ambulance, and they got stuck. And if there's an accident on the beach, if a shell fisherman, and this is the shell fisherman, you know, something happens to one of them or a swimmer, having safety vehicle access there is also a critical thing.
Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
Is it, so Helen, should we make a motion asking you to do what you just suggested you might do, bring before the select board, or will you do it?
I always like motions and votes, and don't forget, when you vote, you have to do it with a roll call vote in virtual world. Yeah, I mean, that would be, I can't promise anything, but just to open a discussion so that Ann Sterling can bring it as an open question to her group, right?
Yes.
And in the meantime, let's all remember that amicable use of Omaha Road for the people in the shellfishing community is possible, and that we're all very, Barbara Austin, you know, spoke very well to that, you know, how grateful people all are if that kind of thing can be worked out. But it would be good to have it be formal. And it would also mean that the homeowners association would have the town helping with stuff that's a problem for them, because we can't do it legally now. Thank you.
Okay, Helen, I would make a motion asking Helen to go before the select board and see if some arrangement can be made with the homeowners for easement. That's be for the shell fishermen, easement, maintenance, share the maintenance, and enforce parking. Is that everything? Okay, any seconds?
Second.
Second that.
Okay. Any discussion? And Helen, is that okay? Nancy? Nancy?
I would just like to thank this committee. I'm really impressed with the work you've done, and especially Ann. You have been so wonderful over the years, and we miss your mom, and I'm so glad that you have stepped up and taken a role of watching out for the little guy like your mom. But thank you all for working so hard on this committee. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Helen, is the motion clear enough for you?
Yeah, and so send an official email about this to whoever's doing this, keeping the minutes. So to to Rebecca Eldridge, the town administrator, the select board, and copy, please, copy Nancy Chavetta and the Conservation Commission. Just because this isn't their problem, the Conscom, it's not their problem in a way, but I am very fond of horizontal communication because the result of not doing that is often a horrible, horrible thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Any other discussion? Can we have a vote on it? Melissa?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Sonia?
Aye.
And I. So unanimous. Okay, anything else about item 6 on the agenda? I think we've taken care of it.
I'd just like to say, just to piggyback on what Helen said, that I think there are multiple stakeholders involved here, and that would include conservation, most importantly because of Sewell's Gutter and a butter to the road, but not necessarily with any, rights to it. But I just wanted to say that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So Steve, one more person, whoever's taking minutes, you should also copy the Conservation Trust, which is the private organization that owns Sewell's Gutter now. Okay. And I've got an address for that. Who's your secretary?
Sonia?
Hi, yeah.
Sonia, I'm going to send you the contact.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else? We got somebody's got echo going. Okay, are we, anything else on agenda item 6?
We were going through the process of selecting a chairman, and we decided that we'd get there by round robin. So Melissa had a shot and you had a shot and I opted out. So I have a question for Sonia. Do you want to have a shot at our next meeting?
Yeah, sure. I could give it a shot.
Okay, good. Then
I've watched a few meetings now and I have a better idea of how it works. So
you'll have to work with the 3 of us to finalize an agenda and then take charge.
got it.
Yeah.
Great.
That's great. Thank you.
Other business, any other business?
One thing I'd bring up, we missed approving the minutes in the agenda.
Thank you, Sonia.
Is that something that we want to just put into the next meeting?
Yes, I think we
Or
have to.
just put it off, yeah.
I think we have to. So the next meeting, we'll try and remember to approve 3 meetings worth of minutes.
I don't know how that went missing.
Okay, let's make sure we get that on the agenda. Any other business? Any other business? Okay. Go ahead, Melissa.
I just wanted to acknowledge that Bill Huss is here. Hi, Bill. He's the president of the Lieutenant Islands Homeowners Association, and I think we should be working with him as well. So thank you, Bill, for coming.
Yep, and thanks for the invitation. Sorry I was late. I had another engagement, but I'll try to do better next time.
Were you here for any of the Lieutenant Island discussions?
Just the very end, so unfortunately, but I see Bob Thompson-Meyer is on the call, so I'll get an update from him. He's
Okay. And there'll be some notes. Sonia taking good notes.
Yeah.
In the minutes. Anything else? I move that we adjourn. Does that have to be voted on? The adjournment? Yes. Okay. I'm getting the yes from Nancy. Okay. I move that we adjourn meeting.
Second.
Second. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. I vote aye. Melissa,
Aye.
Sonia,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
meeting has been adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Steve. Good meeting.
You're welcome.
Great work, everybody.
Nice work.
Thank you.